Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jerry, and welcome to Bread and Breath Devotional, a daily moment to slow down, breathe, and hear what God might be saying today. Let's feed our spirit before the world feeds us the stress. Today's daily bread is titled Faithful and Not Famous. Faithful and Not Famous, coming from the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 4, verses 1 through 2, and it skips to verses 8 through 13. Family, today we are in that passage in verses 8 through 13, and this passage gives us a strong reminder about what really matters in the life of a believer. In a world that celebrates popularity, recognition, and success, Paul teaches something very different. He teaches that God is not looking for famous people. He is looking for faithful people. Paul begins in verse 1 by saying, "Let a man so account of us as of the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God." Paul says we should be seen as servants of Christ and stewards of what God has given. A steward is someone who takes care of something that belongs to someone else. That means your life is not your own. Your gifts are not your own. Your time is not your own. Your calling is not your own. God entrusted those things to you, and one day you will have to give an account for how you handle them. Then Paul says in verse 2, he said, "Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful." And notice he did not say successful. He did not say popular. He did not say admired. He said faithful. God is not measuring your life the same way people measure your life. People look at followers, money, attention, and achievements. But God looks at obedience, consistency, humility, and faithfulness. You can be faithful and still feel overlooked. You can be faithful and still go through hard seasons. You can be faithful and still not get the credit you deserve. Paul understood this very well. And that's why in verse 8, he starts speaking to the Corinthians with a little bit of correction. He says, "Now ye are full, now ye are rich. Ye have reigned as kings without us." In other words, the Corinthians thought they had already arrived. They thought they were spiritually strong, spiritually mature, and spiritually successful. But Paul reminds them that the Christian life is not about feeling like a king right now. Sometimes the Christian life looks like struggle, sacrifice, and endurance. He goes on in verse 9 and says that the apostles were made a spectacle to the world. That means people looked at them and saw weakness, not power. They saw suffering, not success. They saw hardship and not comfort. And Paul keeps going on in verse 11 through 13, describing their life. He says they were hungry, thirsty, poorly clothed, beaten, and had no certain dwelling place. He says they worked with their own hands. He says when people cursed them, they blessed. When they were persecuted, they endured. When they were defamed, they still spoke kindly. That is powerful because it shows us that faithfulness does not always look impressive. Sometimes faithfulness looks like going to work every day, even when you're tired. Sometimes faithfulness looks like saying no to sin when nobody would have known. Sometimes faithfulness looks like praying when you don't feel like anything. And sometimes faithfulness looks like staying committed to God when life feels unfair. Paul is teaching us that the real test of your walk with God is not how high you go, but how steady you stay. Anyone can praise God when life is good. Anyone can feel spiritual when things are going their way. But can you stay faithful when you feel overlooked? Can you stay faithful when you feel misunderstood? Can you stay faithful when nobody's clapping for you? Paul says what God requires is faithfulness. And this is important because many believers today feel discouraged. You may feel like you're trying, but you don't see results. You may feel like you are doing the right thing, but life is still hard. You may feel like other people are moving ahead while you are still in the same place. But this passage reminds us that God is not grading you on speed. He is not grading you on popularity. He is not grading you on how easy your life looks. He is looking for faithfulness. Faithful in private. Faithful in temptation. Faithful in hard seasons. Faithful when nobody sees. Faithful when nobody understands. And the truth is, Jesus himself lived this way. He was rejected. He was misunderstood. He was mocked. He suffered. But he stayed faithful to the Father. So if your life feels hard right now, that does not mean you are failing. And if your walk feels slow right now, that does not mean God left you. If you feel like nobody sees your effort, God sees it. Paul ends this section showing that even when the world treats you like nothing, you can still belong to God. You may not feel like a king right now, or a queen right now, or have your sonship or daughtership. You may feel tired, stretched, tested, or humbled. But if you are still holding on to God and being faithful to him, he will exalt you and rise you above. If this blessed you, please like, share, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs peace today. Bread and breath.